Everybody, to the Cumberland County Commissioners Finance meeting. Today we are going to start off the agenda with a call to order. We are hereby called to order. Ask if there's any public comment. Hearing none and seeing none, we'll go for our first agenda item, which is Betsy Manis and Leadership Cumberland.
Thank you, and I'll turn it over to Dave first.
Thank you, Julia. Please. Betsy, you want to join me?
Oh, okay.
That's the hot seat. Good afternoon, Commissioners. David Galloway on behalf of Leadership Cumberland. My wife is Betsy McManus. She's the Executive Director of the organization, and I promise we won't take up much of your time. But as some of you may not know, the county has been sending a fellow to Leadership Cumberland each year since 1989, which is one of only a handful of other entities, including NMD, Carlisle Regional, and the Carlisle Barracks. So thank you, not only for the time this afternoon, but for that support since then. Leadership Cumberland is an organization that's been around just about since 1989. That was its first year. And just this year came out with a new mission statement, which I'll read to you very quickly. Leadership Cumberland engages in partners to develop and enhance leadership that sustains and serves our community through identified values. Our new vision statement is creating a legacy of influential leaders. We looked at the county as a partner in helping create that legacy. And we would request your continued support for this year's class, which begins August, correct? And I think that covers my section.
And my role is always is to bring paper.
Yes.
You know, you're our package with more than you could possibly want to know about Leadership Cumberland. But since, yeah, we have a new face, I thought it was important, and Jen was so good about getting us on the schedule. We appreciate this. Jim has actually presented to our Executive Connections, our other program for senior leaders in there.
Yeah.
And we appreciate that. It's we're doing it every other year, so don't be surprised if some of you are called out for next year to present. Let me give you just, oh, I'm sorry.
That was down at Shippensburg, wasn't it?
Yes, I'm University.
You attended the one in Harrisburg, I believe.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay.
At that museum. I should have been ate dinner for
Yeah.
I went to, so.
We're not better, we're just different. We are distinct, which I'm really proud
It's
of.
very nice of
And in fact, that's perfect segue, thank you, Gary, in that one of the things that we emphasize that I think is so important is that leadership professional development, that's integral to our curriculum, and Melinda is in the program this year, we'll talk about it. But the 5 outcomes are leadership models in practice, understanding what your challenges are and how you can kind of minimize them or address them, but also your strengths and play to them, because we're all different. You want a different situation in a fire than you do when you're working on world peace. And everybody has strengths and different strengths. And sometimes just knowing when to be a good follower is so important. So that's one of the outcomes that we work on over the program. Professional and personal skills, things that are important both at work as well as community service and at home. Community service, which includes the public service sector as a volunteer and elected officials. And in fact, I'm so sorry, our session next week on Thursday, you have a major conflict, so you weren't able to join us. But hopefully next year that will change and we'll be able to have you. We do have a township commissioner and state representative Delosier able to join us, but we do promote the idea that it's not just the nonprofit sector, but also the public sector is important to serve on boards, commissions, get involved, get elected, school boards, whatever it might be. Then networking, obviously this area I think especially works on relationships based just on size and geography and connectedness, so networking is extremely important. And then finally, knowledge of the county, that we are one county. And I do think a unique aspect of us is we're one of the few organizations that does focus on the county. We have 4 chambers, we have so many school districts, we've got a lot of subdivisions where Leadership Cumberland really says, Cumberland County is unique and we don't have a York, a Lancaster, or a Harrisburg, kind of that core We've got, what our strength is we've got the West Shore and Always communities, we've got what I call Norman Rockwell, Carlisle was the county seat, and then you've got Newville, Shippensburg, more Western County. And people can choose what works for them, you know, their live-work pattern. Do they want more of an urban area? Do they want more small town? Do they want rural? Cumberland County offers that. The challenge is making it feel like a cohesive county. And that's something I think our program does with the fellows in it. That's our outcomes, what we work on. We do it through a year-long immersion. The cohort is 25 to 30 deliberately because we want it small enough that people feel they do get to know each other over the year. We begin with the basic orientation, a two-day treat out at Camp Thompson, and if you haven't been at Camp Thompson, you're really off the grid. And for 25 to 30 fellows who are used to constantly being connected, it's rather fun to watch them walk around, you know, looking for a bar somewhere, but that sets off the year. And then we do monthly sessions, which include things like personality style, communication, conflict resolution, ethics, public service that I talked about. And then finally, they do serve an internship on a nonprofit board over the years, a nonprofit member, Salvation Army, Habitat, the Food Bank, domestic violence, you name it, are options. And quite often they do stay on that board and stay active with it. In fact, the current president of the Domestic Violence Services Board came from our program and we were on an internship, and that's not uncommon. First Night Carlisle, same thing, one from last year, is leading that up. And to finish up, some of the folks that have been in the program, of course, Melinda from this year, HR, Megan Johnston from the NHMR, Darren Bache in the IT department, Richard Bradbury, DA, and Emily Carpenter, who I know is in Philly, was also in the DA's office when she went through the program. And with that, Melinda can say a few words, and she can keep us honest and say what we said is really true.
What Ed's just said is not true. I'll stand. Do you mind if I stand? Okay. So I prepared a 10-minute speech, but I'll take it down a little bit. I had to put in my notes a couple of things that really stuck out to me during the program, but I was selected to participate as a fellow this year, and I had no clue what I was getting into, but after we're 9 months into it, so 10 months, I really stand here amazed and very grateful for the opportunity that was provided to me through the county. We're provided volunteer opportunities, which seems, you can do that on your own personal time, but it was just in places where I otherwise wouldn't have had that opportunity. I chose my fellowship to be in Shippensburg Chamber of Commerce. I absolutely loved it. Great board. They run very efficiently, and then I was able to volunteer through some committees and had a really good time and eye-opening experience through that. Some of the keynote speakers, things that stuck out to me were they covered like basic business accounting, which I was a business major. I hate accounting, but it was a nice way how they broke it down. Constructing and performing speeches, which you can grade me after today. Understanding board governance. Now, I've worked for the county for almost 12 years, so I'm very familiar with how the board operates, but the way that the leadership program broke it down and everybody's roles and subcommittees within that was actually very intriguing to me. Team days, they split us up into 3 different teams, and we were basically, from the bottom up, we were in charge of the curriculum for the day or the agenda for the day, getting sponsors, finding the venue, all that kind of stuff. And through that, you developed a cohesiveness with your counterparts across the county. And we were able to network with each other, develop relationships, connections, which was really nice. But it's not just for self-promotion, but really you can glean from the different people that you were able to be around and bring back to your own individual workplace, which I really appreciated that. They've already covered a lot of what the program offers, but for me, from my perspective, really gave me an insight to leadership styles, my own personal style, strengths, challenges, as that's nicely put it, I call them weaknesses, but how you can take those and then you can develop in your family unit, in your community, in the greater Cumberland County. And lastly, I will say that I left the program I began the program not realizing what was on this county. I had no clue. And I lived here all my life, which is pretty pathetic. So after the program, I gained so much knowledge of the historical value in the public and private sectors, the cutting edge manufacturing technology. It was just eye-opening. And again, not for self-promotion, but you take those things And it gives you a motivation within to then take those values and those ideas and take them back to your individual workplace. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, and I advocate for you to sponsor another individual from Cumberland County. So thank you.
I really wish I had that one too. Thank you. So you can get on with your business. And the last thing I'll do is leave a packet for, as I understand the process has been, allowing the chief clerk to, if you agree, say we'd like to sponsor another fellow for the program this year. I will give him the packet, which includes the application, all the materials, and we'll see who bubbles up. I mean, and who's interested. And any questions? Thank you. I'll presume you're going to say yes. So, but any questions?
Thank you.
If not, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll be back, don't worry. Probably is part of it, I just.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Good job, Melinda, I thought that was very well done.
Thank you.
I don't know if you are familiar with Dr. Dillip is the past president of Toastmasters International. We taught the class. That's the kind of guest faculty who come in free of charge and work with these folks. So yeah, we're very, very fortunate. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Commissioner, mind if I step around for a little bit?
No, it's public
Elections update.
Okay, you're in charge of it now.
All right, thanks.
All right, guys. Thanks. Thank you, Dave.
Laurie? We should try to get as many of you. Hey, Glenn.
Next to you.
Yeah, but you're.
No, Blake, you're supposed to really sit next to you. There we go.
You can look down. Very good. We'll be tempted to do shadow. Okay. So let's get started. We're here for our second item on the agenda for the Commission's Finance meeting. And it's our quarterly update from the Collections Advisory Group. And just to frame today's presentation, collections became the object of focus for the county in part due to the findings of PFM. A lot of PFM's findings by the early intervention program concern how to better manage costs. On the revenue side, however, one of the big items that PFM identified as a source of potential increase, in spite of our dependency on property taxes for most of our revenue, was to improve performance of collections of fines, costs, and fees. As a result of that, a group of stakeholders was convened and eventually adopted the name of the Collections Advisory Group to see how that could best be done, getting a lot of different departments to work together. The focus of the group shifted significantly, not so much to focus on revenue generation per se, but also the whole notion of improving restitution and really fulfilling the county's commitment to justice, performing justice as justice should be dispensed, where those who have obligations to those they've done harm to, by virtue of our legal system, in fact, are dealt with in a reasonable and fair way, but then are held accountable for their actions. We have made significant progress over the years, over the year. We're here today with some hard numbers, but also with some other commentary. We are joined today, in addition to our usual group of suspects, by a new member of the usual gang of suspects, Judge Brubaker here, who is playing a particularly significant role in some of the developments by heading up the contempt court, which is, I'll let her explain why that's significant, but trust me, it's very significant. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. Do we need to do we need to, is there anybody, Vince, that you have in that chat? Do you want introductions or are you pretty?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Good, okay.
Okay, so with the graph, I think most of us are familiar with, so I won't spend a lot of time if there is any questions, let me know. But the red line, the blue bars going up and down, vertical, represent the assessments, first-year assessments by the Court of Common Pleas, Cumberland County Court of Common Pleas. The red line represents first-year collections. And, you know, what's notable, the contrast between the increasing assessments and the declining collections by the red line, going down to the right. What's significant, looking at the data, I wish for everybody to understand, is the first-year collection percentage based on every year that I've looked at, based on the good years and the bad years. The second-year collections are about half, give or take 1% or 2%, of the first-year collections. Third year, again, are half the second year, and it declines accordingly. So you seem to somewhat, you know, although not in all cases, it just seems to somewhat seal the fate of the county. And there are probably some behavioral aspects to that. You know, the farther away the individual is from the court, their experience in court sentence date. But at the same time, there's also some controllable factors. There's also proximity to the individual move and is able to be traced down, tracked down as to location. And then also the amount that the county asks them to pay as far as the monthly payment plan. That's significant. And then the enforcement actions taken if they fall behind. So all those are, so there's some, a lot of controllable elements to that line. Notable also is the economy back in the 100 years was comparable, I would suggest, to the economy today. So that doesn't seem to so much be a factor. The graph is also hopeful. The graph is also hopeful in that it shows what the court is capable of collecting. Because certainly if you look at the high 2 or 3 years, you know, that is certainly the ability, especially in similar economic conditions, that's certainly the court's ability to collect. It's also hopeful in that back in the day, 2004, 5, 6, 7, the court wasn't, as far as I'm guessing, I think the committee best understands, wasn't using the variety of recently approved collection tools. So I think in that sense, I think there's reason for optimism that collections can even exceed. And whenever I talk about, you know, the trend on the graph is also generally representative of the collection of victim restitution as well. So although the trend line represents the county collection, it's representative of the overall trend in court collections, of which restitution is a major part we're going to see. I'd also like to take a moment to mention about how this money is used, because I suggested the money coming into government isn't inherently another thing. This money, however, is used to fund offender supervision, victim witness services, important drug and alcohol services, as well as provide important funding for court judicial costs. By and large, the county share of court cost collections are not discretionary. And those costs that I mentioned, those activities, are some of the largest costs, represent some of the largest costs of the county's general fund budget. It's a truism that every dollar received, on the county share at least, in court cost collections supplants the dollar that you otherwise would have to fund these general fund judicial prosecution, victims, drug and alcohol programs using taxpayer dollars. So the next slide is a look at the original assessments, not supplementally adjusted through appeals and so forth. It's the amount the court initially orders for that decade-long period from 2006 through 2015. And I think what's notable, of course, is the large volume of victim restitution. That's the largest piece, although I'll caution that in looking at that figure, there are some joint and several obligations where you have multiple criminal offenders victimizing a single individual. So there's a bit of double counting there, but certainly, you know, and it's not ascertainable as of yet. We found to split that out, but certainly victim restitution is a very, very large cost. Cumberland County, and then Pennsylvania Department of Revenue gets a lot of local area hospitals, a lot for testing, also the monetary, that's for the lien cost that's owed by the victim is filed to pursue claims through that mechanism. And then largely the municipalities are the municipal police forces, and some of the fees go to often for traffic crimes, for example. And we'll flip the chart. The 45 million total you'll see on that page, that slide, is what's left uncollected of that as of the end of 2015, roundabouts today, of that 98 million we saw in the previous slide. The difference between the two, about 53 million, does not represent all collections. There's quite a few million of that was adjusted down to appeals or otherwise by the courts. That's what we're left to collect from the last decade. That relates, I'd like to relate that back to the initial chart. You don't need to flip back, but you saw the dip beginning around about 2009, the dip in collections. And I would suggest that's where the bulk of that 45 million comes from. The decline in first year and then correspondingly, as I suggested, subsequent year collections on beginning in 2008, 2009 cases. So that's fairly recent. So, just to show that there's lasting impact of not collecting. And then it becomes more of a burden, more costly to try to collect the years from it.
Mike, that 45 million, you're saying the majority of it is 6 years old plus?
Newer, because again, we were more successful in the early part of the decade. And we became less successful in more recent years, up until 2015, the pendulum started to swing the other way. So it's principally made up of beginning of 2008 through 2014. We were less successful we've been, the larger that number will be. As always.
So it's pretty old.
Number of years, up to 2014, which isn't all that long ago. And then the following slide, we got some good news as well, though. In the first quarter of 2016, as compared to actual collections in the first quarter of 2015 and actual collections in 2014, the first quarter of 16 shows an increase in collections of 10%. The increase percent, which is triple 2015's increase over 2014. So we do have a bit of good news in that. Annual receipts, all that's the that represented on the previous slide about 116,000 increase. Annualizing that 116,000 increase, you arrive at an approximate $500,000 increase. Not necessarily a projection, and to be more optimistic than that with all the policies and practices that have yet to be implemented. That you end up with a $500,000 increase in total collections. And then the following slides just break that down between recipients. That's the county piece. Annualized, it shows a county increase of about $300,000 over the prior year. Actual collections on victims, and the following slide, an increase annualized of about $80,000. But again, with I think especially the way we'll talk more on it, I think especially the efforts to get money earlier, the ability to pay, the higher payment plans where appropriate and fair. I think that offers an awful lot of opportunity given the fact that we're down so much in first year collections, and then that sets the stage for subsequent collections in those cases.
Okay, so the last time we were before you was in November of 2015. We presented you with the collections policy that the Board of Judges had approved. And our annual totals at that time to date, as of the end of November, I believe was somewhere around 195,000. We actually finished out the year with a total of $210,976 for 2015. 35, almost 36,000 of that was the constable effectuated payments. They were on payment plans with probation at that time. The policy has now changed that most of those cases are with the warrant collection unit. And we just added in that as of the end of last year, the Dropbox had collected over $10,000, more than paying for itself. We're not going to monitor that going forward. The other thing we wanted to point out was the figures from 2015. We didn't start implementing the collection policy until the beginning of December of last year. So if you look at the first quarter of 2016, we are up $116,000 overall in collections. But specifically for our unit, we brought in almost $82,000 for the first quarter. 15,000 of that was in old cases. Constable collections were at almost 17,000 of that, and the majority came from cases that we currently have on payment programs. The constable collections for the first quarter, as I stated earlier, brought in almost $18,000. We paid out approximately $1,200 in fees. Those are the server fees that come out of our budget, bringing in a total of $16,572 that they collected. The things that have been completed with the policy is we are all set up on the direct debit wage attachment as a voluntary condition for the defendants. We try to encourage them to do that as opposed to making payments in any other manner. In the beginning of March, we started the ability to pay assessments post-sentencing. When defendants come down after being sentenced or after pleading guilty, we've started assessing them for a payment plan. If they say they can't afford the payment plan based on our standard formula, we give them the packet and my contact information to get with me to have that payment plan adjusted. Otherwise, it's set at $100 default until they follow through. Contempt court, as we stated, that started up in late January of this year, and Judge Frederica will speak more about that in a few moments. The value payment system will be online in our office by the end of the month. That will enable us to take payments over the phone when people call in, as well as allow the constables to use the app out in the field on their tablets. The TLO software that I had requested has been brought online, and not only have we successfully been using that, but we also made that available to fines and costs to help locate victims that they have restitution for, the sheriff's department to serve their warrants, and any other department that contacts us with the need of trying to locate somebody. We did a press release on April the 8th. They did a very small mini-series of Agent Kevin Preston, one of our constables, actually going out, detaining someone, bringing them in, having them reset their payment plan, making a substantial payment that day, and being released, just to show that that's our motivation for doing this, is to not be locking people up. Things that we have yet to complete that are in the works. The ability to pay assessments, we would like to start doing pre-sentencing in order to have that payment plan established and allow the judge the opportunity to order that in the sentence as to what they're going to pay, particularly in cases where there's restitution being ordered. We are coordinating with the clerk of courts on suspending driver's license for non-payment. The request for a proposal for the third-party debt collection collections. We received a record-breaking 8 proposals. They've been reviewed, and we are ready to present them to the collection advisory group for a final review before presenting them before the commissioners. We are also working on a bail forfeiture policy that we would like to propose to the Board of Judges, hopefully in August. That is looking at the ability to have cash bail that is paid by the defendant to be applied directly to the docket whenever the bail is forfeited, as well as collection of forfeited bail that was put up by a bondsman. And that's a joint project with the solicitor's office. We're in the process of collaborating for the Amnesty Day, creating a committee that will help get that up and going, and we're looking to do that probably late summer, early fall at this point. What that'll do is allow people that have warrants or that have not met conditions of their probation or parole to come in, and we're hoping to do like a one-stop shop. They can come in, take care of everything that they're delinquent with, get themselves back on the right track and move forward without fear of incarceration.
I have a question. Has a third-party debt collector ever been used in the past?
Yes, adult probation has used a company since 2011, I believe. It does appear they had some success. The problem, I think, is the cases were dumped on them in 2011, and unless the defendant reoffended, those cases weren't pulled back from the collection agency. So I wanted to look at getting 2 collection agencies on board, one locally that may have other cases with the defendant for utilities or some other measure, as well as getting a national company, because we do know a lot of defendants that move out of state. So that was the reason for the request for proposal.
No, I think it's good. It's a large sum of money out there. This has to be addressed from every angle. Some of these collection agencies are pretty sharp, and some of them aren't. They have to see that it's being done.
One novel part of the plan is to have the accounts with one agency for a 6-month period, so they're incentivized to work them before then taking them back from that agency and then turning them over.
And then the Maranatha referrals, to date I've made 3 referrals, and they are currently working with the defendants to get them on, not just a minimal payment plan with us, but as well as teaching them budgeting skills and other resources that are available to them to help get them on the right track financially.
In case people don't remember, Marinette's a faith-based nonprofit organization that we knew from the Housing and Development Authority that uses them to provide similar services to some of their customers.
And now I'll turn it over to Missy, and she's going to discuss the warrants by the constables.
We've had quite a bit of success with serving warrants through the constables. It's a little easier now that the majority of the cases that are delinquent have been turned over to us from probation. I have a little more control as far as how we set the payment plans up and everything. They are, the average of the case is 2 to 12 years old. However, we have served a couple that were, and they have multiple cases for multiple years. But I think the oldest was 1981 or 82. And we had the individual on a payment plan because he has about 7 or 8 dockets. But the average cases, they're usually only about 2 to 12 years old. We've actually served 22 for the year, for the beginning of this year. When we recalled them, the 12 warrants that have been recalled, the constables have had contact with the individual, and they've either come in or called on the telephone. We either take the payment over the phone, or they come in and make the payment. We reset the payment plan. We recall those because a lot of times the constable has only either spoken to the person on the phone because they posted the door with their card. And then we've had
two that were returned, either deceased, out of state, or we just were unable to locate altogether. Pretty sure I have one individual that it just appears that he did not exist anywhere. So, but overall, it's going very well. Had some great success. The biggest thing is getting these people in to us and not putting them in jail. We do have some that we have no other choice. If they can't make a substantial payment, if they can't make any payment, generally we will incarcerate them at that point, and then we get them into see Judge Brubaker for contempt of court, and generally get them out right as soon as we can. But the biggest thing is that we are giving them a purge amount and keeping them out of prison, so that we're not overwhelming them as well, and we're not creating the debtor's prison that nobody wants to see.
So yes, that leads to me. So I see the more difficult ones, the ones that don't have the money to pay, or sometimes the ones that get picked up in the middle of the night don't have the money to pay. Initially, we were having hearings every day. Missy would call me and say, can you see this person today? And I'd say, sure. We ran into a problem because those people are entitled to counsel if they're in prison. So with the public defender's office, we worked out that we have those hearings Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when they do other bench warrant hearings. Right after they do their bench warrant hearings, then I have those hearings. And 90% of the time, I hear these cases just because since I'm handling the contempt court, it's a one-stop thing. We don't have to bring them back. Often we defer sentencing. For instance, we had a guy today that had made a payment since January of 2015. He owes $300, most of his restitution. And he said he can have it paid in full in 45 days. So I gave him a court date 2 months down the road and said, if you don't pay, if you pay, you don't have to come back. It's done. And if you don't pay, then we're not going to be happy unless you bring some money to court that day. So we have the ability to get people in front of the court, which I don't think was being done at all before this year. So they're seeing the court, and that can be a stick that they hold over their head if they're failing to make their payments, if they have to come see me. Also about the use of constables as an MDJ, they say statewide the MDJ collection rates are about 90%, so obviously very good. And a large part of that goes towards the use of constables who go out and round up these people, have warrant roundups, those type of things. So we've had great success in my former job with that. We're continuing and expanding that use.
This chart actually doesn't pertain to the summary warrant policy, although I was going to speak to that as well. The driving under suspension program that we implemented last year with the electronic monitoring and house arrest in place of the mandatory, I think it was about in August last year, 2015, where one of the cases was flagged. I believe probation noticed that it was a person who had been in arrears before. So at that point, we decided that we were just going to make it part of the policy to check everybody's status with the Court of Common Pleas and also with the MDJs. So over just 10 months of doing this, most persons have to pay in full their arrears before they're able to enter the program. And I think it's improved even more this year with Judge Brubaker, who is also doing driving under suspension court, because we're working with people, giving them a limited but reasonable amount of time, whatever their arrears are, to come into compliance, and then they're able to enter the program. So in just 10 months, we collected $13,734 for the Court of Common Pleas and $637 for the MDJs. And the summary warrant policy, that's okay. There's no choice. We had implemented the summary warrant policy back in August of 2015, and we operated for about a month. It was an administrative order issued by the judge. There must have been a complaint made to the AOPC about the policy, so we were asked to suspend the policy. After review by the judicial board, it was found that there was really nothing wrong with the policy. We tweaked a word and we extended the hearing notice from 7 days to 10 days.
But we just got word that since it's flying, we're able to put that back into place. And we have a July 1 start date because the administrative order needs to be issued again and posted for 30 days. But just as a reminder, in less than a month of that policy being in place, we collected $3,600. The MDJ warrants are smaller because the fines and the costs are not as much, but that was pretty good for less than 1 month.
And just to interject, this is, I think, a big plus for our police chiefs and our police departments. Having been at a number of police chiefs meetings where this was discussed, there was great anticipation when it was adopted. The courts, Judge Hess moved forward on this. There was great disappointment when it was put on suspension, but the complaint of the police chiefs and police officers in general is that without something like this, they pick up people wanted for a number of things and had outstanding charges and fines. They drop them off at the prison, and before the police chief, the police officer, was able to leave, the defendant was also on his way out. This allows us, with cooperation, I think this is another example of interdepartmental cooperation. Courts cooperating, the Earl and the folks down at the prison cooperating, and then cooperation with the police departments where people can be detained to address their outstanding costs and fines as part of this policy. And so DA Freed is going to be going to the next police chiefs meeting to announce that we're back in business.
Just have a few comments to add, and we continue to collaborate with the warrants collections unit, and I think it's important to note that there is some division. The warrants collection unit has cases that are 180 days or delinquent or more, and adult probation is still dealing with those cases, the ones that are either placed on supervision or the ones who remain compliant throughout the process. I would like to recognize the warrants collection unit for their willingness to take those cases as 180-day cases, because what it's allowed us to do is we've always had problems with transfer cases that we send to other counties, and it's been difficult to get money from those people. We have difficulty with administrative cases because our administrative cases aren't really supervised. They're on a big bank caseload of 300 or 400 people. So what that has allowed our collections people to do is to focus on those administrative cases and those transfer cases and try to recover as much cost and restitution as we can. So that has really worked out well for the department. In March, we fully implemented the ability to pay an adult probation, so that means all defendants are placed on a payment agreement sentence as per the policy. Surprisingly, we found that the majority of the defendants are entered into higher payment plans than we expected. And that leaves a small portion of individuals who are actually requesting a financial assessment and then enter into the lesser amount payment agreements. Additionally, with the consent of the court, we have put incentives in place which should encourage full payment of cost and restitution in a timely fashion. Our low-risk offenders are given the opportunity for an early release and a reduction in supervision fees, providing that they pay their costs and restitution in full. So we're reducing the length of sentence in times 6 to 8 months, and it's also a reduction in supervision fee to the defendant anywhere from $200 to $300. As Mike had indicated, the first year collections have been traditionally low, so we continue to target those first year collections with our quarterly case reviews for defendants under supervision. Of course, the goal is to determine who's behind on monthly payments and to get them in compliance. In April of this year, we identified 222 defendants as being out of compliance. That's approximately 20% of the active cases under supervision. Of those 222 cases, considered the major violators, 6 defendants were scheduled for revocation probation hearings. 30 defendants were scheduled to appear for administrative hearings at the probation office. And approximately 180 of the remaining defendants were notified by mail with instructions on how to get back into compliance before the issue was resolved. So we're moving forward. I think we're doing some good things in dog probation to help the cause as well.
Lori mentioned in her presentation the ability to pay assessments going forward, wanting to see them done pre-sentence. So when probation does a pre-sentence investigation report, we are going to be looking for the total restitution and a monthly payment amount. And I think part of that movement toward those PSIs, including that information, is as of July 1st, 2016, Supreme Court says that at the time of sentencing, the judge shall determine the restitution and the details of the payment plan, including when payment is to begin. So traditionally, we ask at the time of sentencing for a restitution amount, but in the past, it's rare that a court orders a defendant to pay so much money a month. So with this new legislation, we're going to be asking the court to do just that. So we want those ability to pay assessments done before sentencing, so that's what we can ask the judge to do. I have not seen that happen yet.
Okay, so I think you've got a pretty comprehensive notion of what's been put in place. I think all along since the WCU has been established, we've seen results in positive direction. I think you're starting to see the positive results begin to compound. And with things like the contempt court, the ability to pay policy and other things in place, that we should expect to see, if not exponential growth, then compounding growth over time. I think Darby and others have made it clear in the show as well. If you've got a system and a program in place and you work it consistently according to established guidelines that are fair and scientifically based, such as the ability to pay, that you can have a system that will yield its results. Key is to maintain the will and the consistency in administration, and I think we now see that we have some of the bigger pieces in place. Having the contempt court is the sort of symbolic, philosophical hammer that we've always lacked in this county for many, many years. And we really appreciate the efforts of the courts to go down this road. I think it demonstrates the court's seriousness about this issue, to actually devote time and resources to that. And again, I think as Missy underscored, our goal isn't to load up our prison with more debtors who won't be able to generate the income to pay this. It's to work with them to make sure that they're held accountable, but in a way that's not only fair to them, but also, frankly, from a strictly practical standpoint, will produce better results. So with that, I throw the floor open to any questions or comments from the commissioners or anybody else. Oh, and we would be remiss if we didn't thank the Sheriff's Department for their important role in this. Not only the Sheriff's Department is integral with the work with the constables, but they're doing their own collections, and they have their famous Facebook page, which is
Fabulous.
widely known and highly renowned
And very entertaining.
for using complex social psychological principles to shame people into fulfilling their commitment to society. So thank you, Ron, and your crew for that. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I'd also like to add that we couldn't do, the constable and I couldn't do what we do without the cooperation of the sheriff's department.
Well, yeah, I just say, I mean, I appreciate you all working very hard at this. Again, there's still an awful large amount, so both the victims of crime and in the county. One of the questions I had, and I don't know when we, first started talking about the creation of this unit and we started to address the issue, and I don't know if we ever got an answer, but why, and if you go back to look at Mike's chart, can we pinpoint, have we been able to pinpoint why there was such a drop off, in 2012? I mean, something happened, because
The only thing-
you got a line that goes across like this and it goes boom.
Well, the only thing that we really could trigger initially was in 2006 is when contempt court stopped. And it stopped because it wasn't really being effective. But I think it was handled very differently in 2006 in court. The 2012, we don't really know. It just did. So we're trying to change the way we do things that we continue to do that were just not yielding results, and change them to things that are yielding results. Does that make sense? I mean, nothing really changed in 2012 that would have accounted for
No,
nothing.
because the new DUI laws went into effect
Well before that.
Well before that, we just wasn't.
Yeah,
So cases would start being sentenced in 2005.
Yeah, so the 2006 was probably a combination of the new DUI laws and the elimination of contempt court, which wasn't all that effective to start with, so I'm not sure that had that big of an effect. It just, we lost some of that hammer a little
In
bit.
2012, the assessments dropped a fair amount as well, so.
Yeah, that would have.
Well, you might be able to explain some of the drop in 2007, 8 because of the impact of the recession on the economy. But I was just, I look at this 2012, which is, it's inexplicable as to what happened. What incident. But,
I think it just wasn't the focus.
was
So I don't think anyone was really focusing so much on collections. There's other issues, protecting the community, people that are committing new crimes or testing positive for drugs. Those were more issues that were being addressed.
The few times it came up, and it was always addressed as well. We're collecting the same amount every year. The percentage was falling precipitously, but what we constantly heard was that's the same amount, the same amount. Obviously, that indicates a lack of focus on
Well, and Jim, I think your question, I mean, it would be a great thing to do a master's thesis on. In some counties you see now, like in Lancaster,
Lancaster.
yeah, whatever, close to the place where the, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, there's been a conscious policy by the judiciary in that county to pretty much cease and desist on at least on their constables. They've pretty much done away with their constables. And the philosophy behind it is that you can't get blood from a stone. Now, there you have a sort of landmark date where if there was a drop off, you could probably measure it and attribute it to that. I don't think we had anything like that decisive going on here, although that attitude about not being able to get blood from a stone was, it may have just percolated up and reached critical mass. But unfortunately, there's nothing specific. There was no action taken such that there wasn't Lancaster to do something.
The only other thing I would bring up is just that I think I've harped on it from the very beginning, if you will. And that was, we have folks that, this is based on how successful we are in getting people to pay up in the first year or so after they assessed. I don't want us to lose track, and I know that's one of the things we talked about with the software. I believe, those folks who maybe it's been 10 years or more, but they still haven't paid their debt to society. And again, I'm looking back at the situation, hopefully 10 years from now, if they've turned their lives around, maybe they now have a greater ability to pay. And I don't want us to lose track of those folks, that they still owe restitution of their crime and also the costs that they owe the county, so.
No, in fact, our unit has, and in fact, I personally have the spreadsheet of all the old cases. I think 2014. I have all those cases that still have a balance on. And that's why when we presented the totals, like last year, we collected 114,000 on those old cases. I point those out specifically for the purpose of our conversations. The first quarter of this year, we've already collected almost $16,000 on those old cases. So that is not first year collections, that's not even fifth year collections. That's,
Ron, haven't some of your more notable clues off the Facebook things on the older cases? Or are they mostly news?
It's a mix. More than newer cases than the older cases out there. When you say so. Might be a few older cases
We
we
get
plug
some,
in there, but.
yes, the majority of them are at least within the last 2 to 3 years.
Right.
Every now and then we have one that and especially now since we've taken a lot of the old delinquent cases from probation that are beyond the 180 days and haven't made payments in a while.
Put their pictures out there.
No.
You know, it's 10 years old, it doesn't matter. They owe this money to the county.
Right.
And I think that's great what you implemented.
And they do get
Because I think
some of those older
embarrassment,
cases as well.
you know, embarrassment can lead to folks selling.
Oh, it's absolutely working that way. So the friends call them up saying, look at what you're doing on Facebook.
and they call us, what do I gotta do to get my face taken off of Facebook? And then we're
If it
happy to
works,
oblige
then-
them and say, pay this amount of money, and we'll be happy to remove it.
And it's funny too, if you read sometimes the comments underneath the pictures are saying that, hey, I just saw that guy shoot yesterday.
Or, Jamie, isn't this your boyfriend?
I know he turned out no good.
I thought he paid that, he told me.
But as far as the old cases, with having taken some of these cases from probation, when I type the petition for the bench warrant, I take it to Judge Rubiger, and then the bench warrant gets issued. A lot of them are on the older cases. We're looking at, they're anywhere from 2014 and back. So they're being handled as well, on that end as well.
So Darby, if I understood correctly, you're saying you no longer focus on any collections beyond 180 days?
Any case that's delinquent for 180 days or more, so there hasn't been, any payments for 180 days or more, it goes to the.
And they're off supervision.
Yes, and off supervision.
These are people who are already off supervision and. so
And
they're-
have been off
and-
supervision.
And have been. So if they're off supervision, but they're still paying, they stay with Darby. Once they become 180 days delinquent, they're transferred to the unit.
Okay. And this frees your folks up to,
Tremendously for that group of people that I talked about that we've always had issues with. Those transfer cases, we have many cases going to Dauphin County. Dauphin County, they get their $58 a month supervision fee, and that's really what they're concerned about, and other conditions of probation. The officers over there aren't very concerned about Cumberland being reimbursed. So we've always had issues with that. So what this does is it allows our collections officers to be more aggressive and dealing with these people to make them aware that there are outstanding debts here in Cumberland County.
I think, just in terms of how this is all worked out, I think there's a built-in, I don't know, it's conscious, somewhat unconscious, drive to be as cost-effective in terms of how we divide up responsibilities. Probation officer gets paid with a probation officer, they have multiple responsibilities. What we're trying to do is divide the burden in such a way that you're working the cases with the most cost-effective resource possible. I will say that as we go along, and if we see the results that we hope to see, the notion of adding additional resources to the effort then becomes much more compelling, because we know if we got the formula working well, and we're working the program produces pretty reliable results, we'll know that if we add additional resources to the effort, that those resources not only will pay for themselves, but will generate more and more of a surplus in terms of the money going in versus the expense of doing the collections.
That raises a question I have here, which is, as I understood this, when we implemented this, the idea was, obviously we had to bring additional resources on board, and it was essentially sold as a pilot basis that, I guess, 2 years time frame, I think it was.
Something like that.
And we have, but what you presented to us had some projections on it, and the understanding was by the commissioners, we do expect this program to demonstrate financial return on investment, i.e. it has to pay for itself and then generate a premium over the top of it. So we had those projections. I guess what I'd like to see when we do this is to know how are we tracking in terms of what was expected, what was projected out in the future to meet those goals. I didn't think I saw anything in here that really says how well we're tracking based on that time frame.
I think we've got enough stuff in place now structurally
Yeah.
that we can start holding ourselves to that, to that commitment. And I think in subsequent quarterly presentations, we'll start to look at that in a very specific way.
It's just good to know if we're on schedule with what our expectation was or not. I'm always looking to, to cut it off if we're missing a target here or there, but missing a target is something we need to know so that we can determine, is there a corrective action, do we extend our time frame and a more realistic projection?
Our quid pro quo was always, if this costs us more to administer than we bring in, it makes more sense to just give the money to the victims. It's a better use of the money. So that's always been the sort of premise upon which this has been done, and I think we'll be in a position in the next month to come back and start to look at that.
But that doesn't address, in keeping that in mind, that doesn't also address the defendant accountability factor. That having the additional resources brings the defendants more accountable, which can tend towards not having them come back later, which means they have to deal with them again, and the DA has to deal with them again. And, you know,
Yeah, I'm just saying that one of the
Right.
ways it was sold to us was,
Right, it
this is
needs
gonna
to
be a
be-
return on investment, and we're gonna show a result within a 2-year time frame. I just wanna know, are we on target?
No, Gary's absolutely right. I mean, that was the condition for this, the creation of the unit. And, I think we're going to want to continue to monitor this. The third-party debt collection RFP that's getting ready, is there a cost to the county for that?
No.
So they work all, with kind of like a fee?
And that doesn't come off what the defendant owes, though. The defendant would owe that to the collection.
In addition,
yeah.
In addition to what gets
That's right.
paid, right? So it's not like the defendant pays $100, and we have to credit $100, but we only get 80 of that. All 100 comes to us, the defendant owes.
Okay. Now, that,
Share.
for example, if we put that in place and we have that, approve the RFP, or approve the proposal, that doesn't get lumped into, warrant collection units success, or
Why not?
Those are the cases
Well, that we could do.
we will be sending to them and recalling.
But that's outside of what we do, right?
Who's taking advantage of a
No,
resource?
they're an agent of the department.
We had a third-party collection agent before, though, right?
Which
And that's
was,
included.
which an agent of adult probation.
I imagine it, I think of it as using similar to using the constables or any form of law enforcement where you have somebody, that you're contracting with, asking to assist in the efforts.
They're going to be managing the cases that go and determining whether or not it's effective, and pulling them back when it's not effective, and then sending it to the other agency and monitoring progress. They're just using them as an additional
Having
resource.
managed many accounts receivable management systems, your collections agency is just another arm. You're basically outsourcing a function, but it all comes back into the same pot. So while they're doing the actual collections, they're being engaged by virtue and under the management of the warrants and collection unit. And if their success or lack of success is a reflection on how well they're being managed by the warrants and collection unit.
The dueling, as I call it, the dueling collection agencies, I think really part of the answer to the question that you raised about what do we do with the old cases. Some of the vendors that the RFPs we've looked at have really impressive systems to process large volume, thousands of cases through using multiple databases, almost on a daily basis to identify the whereabouts of folks and so forth. And so I think that'll go a long way to addressing that in a very efficient manner without any additional cost to the county. You're concerned about about what we did with all these zero balances, you know, the past year.
Okay. All
Any other
right.
questions?
We just need to have an accurate measurement, that's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. We have pot style on the job, so you know you're gonna get a lot of data and it'll all be pretty solid. Because, and if you doubt that, we'll just give you your cat's greatest tips.
Thank you all for what you're doing, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.